There's plenty of people who yearn for the original Call of Duty golden era for a number of different reasons, but it seemed like in recent months we are the closest to seeing something of that return that we ever had been after such a long period of time, where looking back you just see those player counts dwindle and dwindle even further. 2 months ago it was reported that we'd perhaps see a resurgence of those games after a long-standing promise from Xbox, but then nothing really came of it until this week. Today we're going to be taking a look at what could be happening with these now cross-generation builds and access to the original Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3. So drop your thoughts, drop a like, and make sure to subscribe for more COD and other FPS coverage. I'd love to have you in the community, but for now, let's get into it. So to recap, all of the way back, in December, it was seen that games were listed on the PC Xbox storefront for basically all of the classic Call of Duty experiences, from World at War up to Black Ops 2, everything in between, and maybe even a couple more, because I think Ghost was actually on that list as well, along with Advanced Warfare. But this could have happened for a handful of different reasons. I think, though, the most logical, without further context at the time, would have just been simply, okay, well, we have COD available as a cross-platform game, as in available in a number of different platforms, Xbox, PlayStation, and then on PC, Steam, and BNet, so found on multiple platforms. Doesn't matter where it's really listed at, and with Microsoft now officially owning the IP, why wouldn't they want to try and get their first-party sales at that point instead of dealing with, say, any publication fees on things like Steam, where a different platform would take a cut of each one of those sales? I can't imagine that Call of Duty would have the same. I think the base is 30% for a publication fee on game sales on Steam, but I mean, if it was, you're looking at $18 on a $60 game that would then not go back to Microsoft. You just take 100% of the profit of their self-owned platform, and also allows players then to funnel into the Xbox reported numbers, being that that would include Game Pass as well for Game Pass PC. So it was genuinely just a logical assumption that it's just a market share move, taking a possible larger ownership stake of what was already being played, and at the time that made sense. But then, 2 months back, Xbox Era reported on new games coming to Game Pass, where it was stated, according to our sources, this time it's going to be 2009's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, set to return to the spotlight with a game due to hit the subscription service in March or April of this year. If the story rings some bells, it was covered by a pretty reliable source who previously shared that while he knew of Call of Duty titles coming to the Game Pass platform in March, he was unable to confirm which it was. So this brought out a bit of hopium at this point because, well, Black Ops 6 wasn't doing so hot in terms of content, and Warzone was still absurdly in the trenches, and people were just looking for something else to scratch that itch. But that brings us to now. Why are we having this conversation again? Well, as reported on by Insider Gaming, but it's public information that you or I can look up, both Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3 were listed on the Australian ratings board, but in a few different ways than maybe you expect. And when things are like this listed, it usually indicates that something is going to happen with it relatively soon. But listed on the ratings board, it includes mentions of things like cross-gen, online interactivity, and with the listed designations being 2 and 3, not the Roman numeral equivalents, it seems like these are referring to the classic games. But cross-gen, initially speaking, I feel like this would, without the context of the next thing we'll mention, I feel like this would be in relation to just allowing players to buy it on the current generation and then being able to play back with players all the way back to perhaps Xbox 360 or, as I'll touch on in a second, PlayStation 3. Basically just a glorified backwards compatibility version while being able to buy it on your current platforms for that, like a relisting of it per se. But the part that stumps me is the fact that the Modern Warfare 2 listing is for a PlayStation 5 cross-gen edition. So in theory, this is the same concept, but on a bigger sort of scale, I guess. And it nullifies the idea this is only going to be a Game Pass thing or an Xbox exclusive thing, meaning the scope of this might be a little bit larger than we initially may consider. And then the other thing is the online interactivity. This suggests that it would include multiplayer and perhaps Spec Ops as well, likely offering the entire package here, not just the campaigns like we saw with Modern Warfare 2 Campaign Remastered, which I kind of think adds to the intrigue of players that may be interested in this. So certainly interesting, but the one thing that I'm personally not sort of convinced on, I guess, is I'm seeing a lot of discussion on terminology, and for this, it kind of makes a big deal. Some people are saying it's going to be a remaster. Some people think it's just going to be the ability to buy the old games and play them again on updated hardware like this without seeing the dedicated resources into a remaster. And that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like if this were a remaster, we would have heard about this for a long time at this point. Like, yeah, Modern Warfare 2 campaign got a remaster and something that was, at the time, current generation tech, that could be applied, but that doesn't account for Modern Warfare 3. That doesn't account for the multiplayer of either of those games. So for me, I feel like we would have heard of and would have seen a bunch more resources put towards this if it was a remaster, rather than likely what is just a relatively easier undertaking that would be like fixing the servers and adding the ability to play and matchmake backwards compatible on the servers, both on the Microsoft side with Xbox and then in partnership with Sony and PlayStation, being able to fix that now and clean it up a bit more. I mean, when you think about it, Microsoft already cleaned up the matchmaking for these older titles when the sale of Activision was still pending, so why wouldn't they be able to do the same thing on the PlayStation hardware as well for the servers associated there? But all in all, it is a very weird situation and something that is still maybe introducing more questions than it does answers. So what's this likely outcome? For me, I'm thinking, again, this is all kind of larger picture Xbox stuff, making these backwards compatible titles more available, and I would imagine, at least when we think about it from an Xbox perspective, that it's something that they're getting this ready to go onto Game Pass, or if you don't want to do it with Game Pass, you can still buy the functionality to play backwards 2 generations to the Xbox 360 originals. So far, we've only seen Modern Warfare 3 and Black Ops 6 added to Game Pass, where Black Ops 6 saw a huge boom in the subscription totals, and reciprocally, the player counts also at launch on Game Pass were huge. Imagine doing that again with classic games people have been wanting for a long, long time. But with the PlayStation side of things, they've also made that commitment all the way back. One of the first big selling points for their sort of plea to the courts to allow the deal to go through was that they were going to bring games to more platforms. Most notably was the Nintendo platforms that were mentioned. So doing this sort of cleanup service and offering backwards compatibility for PlayStation could also be a part of that. Though I would be lying if I said the PlayStation 5 sort of inclusion amongst all this didn't stump me a little bit. But perhaps the biggest question of all is, when will we see an announcement of this and perhaps even a release? This is where things get a bit muddy, and it's truly all speculation. So far, to my knowledge, we don't have anything substantial in terms of presentations until the Xbox Game Showcase, which was just announced to be June 8th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So that's another 2 months away for Microsoft to use like a first-party thing to announce anything. But unless it's a surprise announcement and subsequent drop, there doesn't appear to be much of a springboard for said announcement until you'd be able to drop something like that. Unless it's a surprise announcement and surprise drop, which is also possible. Like that original report did talk about the Game Pass editions being added in from March or April. We're already a week into April, so that does leave a bit of runway, but also not a whole ton. If they're looking to announce this in a bigger capacity before that, though, that's still where it's up in the air. The other theory I'm kind of leaning towards, if it is something that Xbox really wants to like use this as a unifying launch to bring all players together and kind of get some cheap brownie points with players that have always really wanted to play these classics, is announce it as a minor announcement in tandem as a secondary Call of Duty announcement, perhaps at the Xbox Game Showcase. Because if that's the case, well, COD 2025, what's rumored to be Black Ops 7, would make sense to be announced in that window of time around the Xbox Game Showcase, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. Black Ops 6 was the main focus of last year's, following the acquisition and the first full year under the direct ownership of Xbox, but as we've already seen, Outer Wilds 2 is going to be the featured direct this year, as Black Ops 6 was last year and Starfield was the year before. But what I mean is that secondary announcement comes down to the nature of the year 2 expectation and perhaps just a sort of timing thing. Instead of a large announcement and a large showcase of the game upcoming, including a campaign, multiplayer, and zombies details, it's quite possible we see just like a teaser of some kind, maybe a reveal trailer, but not quite a full reveal dissecting everything. I mean, a reveal would fit the timing of a showcase without the need for a 30 to 60 minute follow-up at Direct. So instead of a large centerpiece being on COD's next game, you could still amplify the eyes on the presentation and grab that Call of Duty crowd by making a shared announcement of a teaser for the next game or whatever, and something that you could maybe play right now at that point, i.e. re-releases, maximizing eyes and hands-on with COD, while at the same time maximizing Game Pass subscription, either revenue, player numbers, whatever the case, while not necessarily overextending and playing your future cards too soon. And the timing of that would kind of back this up because we just had Verdansk launch, but you really want to give that time to breathe, as Call of Duty has done with basically every major reveal or launch. There's always time afterwards where there's nothing going to be. It's like radio silence for official marketing and anything that would be new, revealed, or released. Summer announcement or preview, so like 2 months down the road, you're either getting ready for or just after Season 4. Off the top of my head, I can't remember when the Battle Pass ends in comparison to June 8th, but it gives Verdansk and that new sort of revitalization, that huge launch back into Warzone, it gives it time to breathe. It's not the brand new thing, it's not the talk of the town perhaps at that point, but it also could be sustainable. If player numbers are dropping though, you could drop a cross-gen Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3 for the summer to bolster out player counts on Call of Duty, not necessarily Black Ops 6 or Warzone, but the Call of Duty IP until then, perhaps in the fall, whenever we end up seeing the next game launch. You basically just make sure you're taking as many players that may be moving away from Call of Duty and you entice them to come back in any way, shape, or form. But it also affords them the opportunity to do another reveal within Warzone, which I do think is likely. Black Ops 6 and Modern Warfare 2 were the only ones in recent years that didn't, and they commanded their own reveals because one was the next generation of their product, so it wouldn't make sense to reveal Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 in Warzone 1, but then Black Ops 6 was the first game after a major acquisition that was also in 4 years of development, and perhaps was the most hotly anticipated game of the franchise to change the pace of what was just a weird and honestly frustrating to then slow 2 years. But with Return of Verdansk, numbers reportedly soaring, I don't think that they're going to let off the gas when it comes to utilizing Warzone and trying to funnel even more and more people in. If your whole thing is player numbers that you want to report back to investors, you certainly would not sabotage yourself by not utilizing a resurgence of that interest in the game already to then get more eyes on a limited time event or mode looking at your next game. The fear of missing out is a very powerful tool when it comes to marketing, so they'd be kind of foolish not to use that, and they know that. They've done it in the past multiple times. Now, it is possible, perhaps this is all just, again, speculation, so maybe it happens next week, they just surprise drop it, which I wouldn't be opposed to, but it certainly is something that when you look at the timing and how they like to format everything, it's strange this is happening now if it's not leading to something a little bigger. But for now, that's where we're going to wrap it up. Just wanted to fill you guys in because it's definitely a situation that the more you look at it, the more questions it really introduces and maybe leaves you scratching your head a bit, trying to understand it all. But for now, that's where we're going to wrap it up. So let me know your thoughts down below. Are you guys hoping this does come to fruition, that you get to play Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3 cross-generation? Maybe not cross-platform, though, that'd be really sick, but cross-generation and being able to play the classics renewed and maybe revitalized in player count. Would love to hear your thoughts on all this, but if you enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Call of Duty and other FPS content. I'd love to have you in the community. For now, though, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.